Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Dan Hancock, mental health PT, Danny Williams and Ben Lewis. This episode is really cool. We're joined by Lawrence Price, who is a fitness model, and not going to be the episode that you expect. He tells us about his amazing journey from being a busy fool, in his own words, to really owning his life and going on this incredible spiritual journey. In his words, he wants to teach you how you can control the controllables and surrender to the uncontrollables, and it's a truly fascinating episode. We really hope that you enjoy this as much as we did.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Danny Williams, Dan Hancock and Ben Lewis. Now, today's episode, I'm so excited to introduce Lawrence Price. He's a really cool guest. He's a fitness model, fit trainer. He's a dad who works with some amazing people, and he's had an amazing career so far. Here he is, Lawrence Price.
Oh, big me up. Too much. God.
Lawrence, how are you?
Yeah, mate, really good. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for coming in. Lawrence has been blown away by the setup already, which just goes to show he's been really looking forward to a day out.
I was saying, like, foam walls just in case things get a little bit physical. No one's going to get hurt. And normally with my podcast, not that I'm plugging it, I'm just saying,
No, you can plug it. You can plug it.
I'm normally walking around fields with my guests, dodging cowpats, and I've got the wires attached to me and attached to them. So it's nice to sit down in a professional setup in an actual city, the city of London. I feel good.
Maybe we could try that next series. We should go on a big walk and just give it a go. Get out of the studio.
It's a bit like With Nail and I, but on podcast kind of.
Yeah.
How do we do? Have we got a team there? Have we got a team? Is someone have we got a proper setup?
I wish. Dan, I wish. No.
Have we got someone looking over his shoulder?
Somebody just walking backwards, not avoiding the cow pat with a camera.
I'm eternally in beta mode. Beta mode. When we're kind of like, we're just testing things out. We're getting ready for the proper launch. It's a soft launch. I've been in that kind of state for maybe 2 years or so. But yeah. We'll get there.
So for anyone listening, a little bit of an intro on yourself, Lawrence. Tell the guys what you're all about, a little bit about your career, a little bit of background, and then we can take a really deep dive into that.
Sure. Yeah, mate. Well, I'm from Wales originally, so naturally being from Wales, I grew up singing and playing rugby, and I started playing rugby for Wales at under 16 level. So at the age of 15, I was put into the S&C environment where I was doing, Olympic lifting technique and just learning a little bit more about energy systems and how to train, which is quite lucky because everyone else was still at school doing some quite old school forms of training as well. And then at that age, I was like, well, I want to be a rugby player. So I went to university, studied journalism and played rugby until I was 24. And then I moved to London. I qualified as a PT. I'd already been a PT for 2 years in Bristol, and then continued my PT life in London, trying to live the fitness professional's dream, which has brought me to where I am now. And all those very, very delightful things that Danny listed out there. Been very lucky to get stuck in. But yeah, been 16 years as a PT essentially.
Wow.
It's been fun.
Brilliant.
Good times.
Before we dive into the main bulk of the conversation, I want to ask a little bit more about your career and your journey.
Yep.
So looking into you, obviously, as we do, we have to do a bit of research, looked into you a bit. I found that you've worked with Hollywood actors and also hosted workshops for military special forces. Tell me a little bit more about that, because that sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of interesting watershed moments in your job where you get to work on certain projects, and that's relating to a particular film that I worked on, and the actress had to shift her body composition from being quite physical and working class in a Victorian era at the start, through to halfway through the film when there was essentially a scene where she'd been on starvation protest in prison, and so her body had to then represent that.
Wow.
All the while whilst obviously filming the
so not your normal prescription for a client.
Yeah, and the hard thing about, so you get kind of, I suppose, 2 or 3 months in the lead up to a film where you've got all access to the actors, and you can be pretty relaxed with your schedule, and they're pretty relaxed with theirs. But as soon as shooting starts, they kind of picked up at 5 a.m. and off and out the door, not back in until 11 p.m. And obviously the filming takes a priority, and you're kind of trying to fit in with that, and it becomes quite tricky to manage. So there are all these moving parts that take you away from just the pure theory of how to get someone going through that process, actually into the practical side of how to make it work within a tricky environment like that. So it was really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. And then the special forces side of it as well, hosting workshops for the for the TASAS for that particular one, and getting a bunch of guys in a room and having a little bit of a chat about movement screening that we're going to do, and then getting them into the actual quite old school gymnasium. I should probably call it gymnasium. And the interesting thing about that is, if you're in the special forces, you've got all different types of personalities and body shapes and sizes. And I remember, certain individuals in there being extremely mobile and able to do wall squats right down, sort of, arse to the ground, as it were, perfect form. And then you've got other slightly gnarly guys who just can't seem to sort of move anywhere close to 990.
That's us. That's us.
Me in particular.
But the interesting thing is, it all works, and everyone's got their own different place. And even though everyone moves differently, they all have a place within that. It's like any team, right? It's like rugby, the sport I'm from. You've got props with the way that they go about their business, and you've got the wingers and the way that they go about their business on the pitch. But it all links in to the next person and creates a complete picture of the puzzle at the end of it. So yeah, really interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
How was battling that power dynamic with, because a lot of big personalities, you've obviously mentioned the physical, lots of people, lots of different bodies, but lots of people, lots of different personalities. There'll be people that want to take control, people maybe want to hide away. How did you manage that on a mass scale? Because that's a difficult thing. It's all right to do one-to-one, isn't it? Which, you'll know from one-to-one PTing, you can kind of adapt on the spot. But when you've got so many different characters and people with different opinions in one room, how did you find that?
I think the word control is the ultimate word there, and I think it comes down to the control of me, i.e. the coach in the room, and just being able to be eyes on but hands off, and allow people to figure things out themselves. And I can give guidance, and I can see that some people might meet me with resistance because it might shine a light on an area that they're uncomfortable with moving, which is absolutely fine. I'll give them that privacy, and I won't kind of bring it out in front of the class if it's not something that they want to do. And so just being able to give people their own private space, even though it's in a group environment, to do things their way and to respond to it their way, with a bit of compassion and a bit of love, even though they're kind of mean, tough guys in a room, giving them a bit of...
Did you experience any of that, like mean, tough guys that, they find it difficult to do a squat, or mobility is not as good as someone else in the room, and they got quite kind of embarrassed or shy? Did you ever come across that? I
think, there's that kind of alpha male personality, I suppose, who... and A-type personalities, which a lot of us are, where there's a bit of summit fever, and unless it's sort of hard and fast, it's not so interesting, or it's not as necessary in their view, perhaps, potentially. And so when you do this, when you slow things down, you look at ankle mobility and you look at movement screening, I know sometimes people can find it a little bit frustrating, as it were. But then I think the job of the coach is to show how we're reverse engineering movements so that we can rebuild them so that they function better. And as long as it comes full circle and in the narrative of the workshop, people are happy. But it's great. You get to see people get frustrated and then fulfilled and happy by the end of it, because they've managed to put it all together. And if they're not, like all of us, if we're not challenging the people that are in the room with us in some shape or form, they're probably not going to learn something new that day. So it was almost like I was doing my job as well at the same time, if they felt challenged by it. They want it to be too easy and too straightforward. Yeah. And those guys are used to fitness being a beasting, as it were. That's the term that comes out. So if they're going to do phys, it means that they're going to they're not just going to train energy systems, but they're going to build resilience, because it's a big part of why they do their training. And it's the same in rugby as well, and many other sports. It doesn't always come down to the letter from a sports science point of view. It also has to, so you're not getting the exact rest times for recovery, and you're not having the script play out in front of you exactly how you think it's going to be. The coaches are deliberately kind of messing with your mind a little bit, and when you think you're going to rest, you have to do a little bit more work, or when you think the session's over, there's something else that comes in. So building resilience is a big part of the physical development as much as anything else. Yeah.
Brilliant. Love it.
Wow. So obviously you've got a very, very busy lifestyle. You've led a very busy life in general thus far. You're a dad. Juggling that, it must be difficult as well with your goals and your ambitions. I want to talk a little bit about time management. I'm sure a lot of our listeners can definitely benefit from hearing some of your tips, some of your advice on how, not just how you manage your time, but also how do you manage your kind of your intention and your intensity towards your goals and what you want to achieve. I can imagine, and I can speak from personal experience, that when things get tough, motivation dips and you think, oh God, I can't juggle this. How do you make sure your aggression for your ambition stays up here when things seem to be going against you and things get difficult and busy, schedule piles up? How do you maintain that aggression and also, like I said before, manage your time in order to get everything done?
Oh, that's a really good question, because and I've tried it all over the years. I've tried to be very busy and been aware not to turn into a busy fool, just kind of, going to 1,000 meetings a day just for the sake of it, trying to, be here, there and everywhere, to this event, to that event, to see this client and to say yes to that job. And I've tried that, and you're always going to get a certain degree of success from doing that, purely because it's a bit of a volume game, if you like, and the more you kind of throw at it, you do get something back. But I've settled on the concept that my goals, I need to have some clarity around my life goals and some vision around my purpose. But I don't set out, and I know this isn't for everyone, but it works for me. I don't set out a clear roadmap necessarily to obtaining each of those goals. I kind of have the intention to fulfill that goal, and I have the vision around it. And then I just focus on my day-to-day details of my personal growth, my soft skills, my hard skills, so whether that's my personal growth journey or developing the skills I need professionally. And then just seeing how it's amazing how things fall into place if you have that intention and you just let it flow. You don't create too much resistance around your goals by forcing it, by trying to do too much. And I feel that when I look back over time, it's incredible how things have unfolded towards those goals being realized in the end. And it takes a funny paradox of intent and focus on your purpose, but also ease and flow and surrender to the unfolding taking place. For me, that works quite well, and it's in line with a lot of my kind of spiritual feelings as well as my professional and physical undertakings as well.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's really powerful as well. And there's a Q&A video on your website that we watched earlier on, and I think you referenced trying to find that sweet spot in your life on balancing everything. Have you found that sweet spot, or is that a continuous work in progress?
I think I know the video you're talking about. I think it was filmed 3 years ago.
2019, I think it was. Yeah.
So that was pretty much when I was just on the verge of having like an anxiety attack, actually, for the first time ever in my life. And I remember doing this. I filmed this advert in East England, and I had to race across town to have a big meeting, and across the country to have a big meeting in the West Country, and I was kind of like doing a million things every week, thinking that was successful, and that's because these things were in line with my goals. But I was kind of constantly at this low-level anxiety, and always kind of feeling it. And the same way you have that sink analogy for training athletes, where you want to make sure that when you're pouring water into the sink, you're letting out enough water at the same time so that it doesn't overflow and you break that threshold. Well, the same can be said for our emotional state as much as it can, I think, for our physical state. And I was just buzzing off the fact that I was busy and pushing myself harder and harder and sleeping less and being awake more and moving more and the rest of it. And that was kind of, I think, when you saw that video, I think within me I knew that it probably couldn't carry on like that for too much longer. I didn't know that anxiety attack was coming because I'd never had anything like that before, and I thought I was invincible. Yeah. But it was a really interesting lesson for me about how to manage my emotional state a little bit better, and just in the same way as I say that I manage my physical state. We train our bodies for performance and for resilience, and we factor in recovery to that. But so often we just glaze over or gloss over when it comes to doing the same for our emotional health at the same time. Yeah. So that actually led me on a whole different path of self-discovery and personal growth. And since then, I'm pleased to say I have found my sweet spot.
Brilliant. Well done, mate.
I think work-life balance nowadays is brilliant. And yeah, I think at the moment, I think that when I think of my hierarchy of needs and my very first one out at the front, the first box that I want to sort of tick and take care of is obviously, security for my family, but also alongside that, a good work-life balance. And I feel that's in a really good place at the moment. And it wouldn't have happened had I not experienced what I experienced 3 years ago, because I wouldn't have made the changes that I had to make.
Do you mind telling us about that in a little bit more detail, if you're comfortable doing so? So firstly, thanks for sharing that, and it's refreshing for us to be able to come in and just so openly chat about that. Now, I can totally relate. I know what it's like running about busy fool. You're being very, very busy. And I think there's actually something called, now I may be totally butchering this, but it's like distraction anxiety. And it's essentially when you're on your phone and you're from one thing then to the next, to the next, to the next. And not only can it alter your state, but essentially a great way to describe anxiety can be your mind and your body working at a different pace or working at a different level. So you can imagine that the brain's fuzzy, body's maybe getting a little bit fuzzy, and things are all over the place, and you need to try and bring that back to balance. And that's something that I've definitely experienced before as well. So tell us a little bit about that anxiety attack. It's coming on. It's obviously something that you've never experienced before. What's going through your head, and how was that for you?
It's strange because I feel like we've got we have a mind. We aren't our mind, but we have a mind, and then we have our body. We're not our body, but we have a body. But what are we? We're consciousness. I don't want to get too deep. But I'm still
spirituality started already.
Yeah, this is music to my ears. I'm enjoying this.
And I think back then I was probably all in my head. I wasn't in my heart or in my consciousness enough. I wasn't resting in awareness enough, and I was constantly in that state of being busy, as you say, mentally. I could be sitting on the train, having 3 hours to get to the next job, but I'd be if I wasn't on my phone, kind of juggling information around, I'd be juggling it around in my head. And so then that, of course, would have a response to my central nervous system, which is constantly in that fight or flight state, kind of always kind of like excited, always on this knife edge between either being excited or anxious, and it's kind of like teetering on the edge the whole time. And I suppose that physical reaction to the mental activity it is that real trigger where you reach that tipping point, that threshold, as I say, of like the sink, the water's pouring in, all of a sudden it reaches the top, starts pouring over, and my heart rate went through the roof. I couldn't really see properly. I was kind of having a slight dizzy moment, and this was before I'd really had any amazing experiences with breath work, but I knew that breathing was a good anchor and a good way to kind of reconnect to the present moment, to ourselves. And so I just went through a bit of breath work, but I was being asked questions at the time, and I was having a conversation which was going swimmingly until that moment, and I just had to kind of take time out. So it kind of shook me, and I went, and for the follow on, it was a bit like the stone had been thrown into the pond, and the ripple effect of that anxiety stayed with me for a few days afterwards. And so I started, like anyone who's had this kind of experiences, and has had to, therefore, no choice but to take note of it and do the work. I started to do that and to research a little bit more about what it was about and how to manage it. And that just began with searching for the next best feeling. So you can't jump from being, I don't think, I certainly couldn't, you can't jump from being in an anxious state to clicking your fingers and then you just feel kind of that blissful awareness where, you're, it's water off a duck's back and you're just living life and it's a breeze and everything's coming easy. I think you have to get there in incremental stages. So I started to develop a nighttime routine where I had, I noticed that my sensory systems were really in tune with things like I would have my candle, and my paraffin-free candle with lavender. I love lavender. In evenings, I would dim the lights and I would start to go very general with my thinking. If I felt like a sort of problem-solving question coming into my head and it was like 8 p.m, I wouldn't start trying to solve it like the old me. I'd just recognize it, let it go, and then just, as I say, go very general with my thoughts. And because I was there with the candle and I was smelling, and I'd maybe have some meditation music, I would be very connected to the present moment. And then being able to rest in that awareness, you kind of feel the anxiety melt away. And as the symptoms melt away, you can then do the deeper rooted work of the cause of it. And then obviously that's the sort of where the real work begins in many ways. You kind of manage the symptoms so that you can do the real work, which is manage the origin of it in the first place and change what you need to change in your life and think. Still slowly start the process of thinking differently, behaving differently, and being kind to yourself, and practicing a bit of compassion for yourself, not just for other people.
I love that. And one of the things I just want to touch on very quickly, what I love there is you mentioned that you were at this point and it was excitement and it was anxiety. And me and Ben were on a Zoom call another day with one of our coaches, the other day, apologies. And she has suffered from anxiety for a very long time. And she was like, I don't like labels anymore. She was like, I just call it excitement now, because it's the exact same response mentally, physiologically as anxiety. And she said, I don't like that damaging label, so now I just call it excitement. It's the same thing. I've totally flipped the perception. And we won't get into conversation on labeling and all that type of stuff just now.
Save that for another day.
We'll save that for another day. But I hope you won't mind me saying, but I think a lot of that potentially may have came on from internal pressures, potentially.
100%.
Now, what I would really like to get on is some of the external pressures from being in that job. So Danny pointed out at the start there that, you know, you've been a fitness model, you've been in Men's Health, you've been on the front cover of Men's Fitness. How's that journey been for you? And what sort of pressures have you faced externally? Did potentially the external pressures then lead to having the internal pressures? How was all of that for you?
Oh, very good questions, Dan.
We've got deep now.
I think you opened the door, now we're running.
I saw my opportunity. Boom, we're in.
No, I think getting that separation between internal and external environment is something I now understand, whereas everything was like a mishmash before. It was like a head full of spaghetti. Everything was kind of intertwined. I never really saw, the separation in myself and who I am between my mind, my body, my expanded awareness, whatever you want to call it. But also I didn't really see the difference between external pressure or something which was an external event which I could relate pressure to, but it was a choice because I could experience that reality in a way that I choose to. And I was very lucky with something with modelling, because modelling was one of those goals when I was younger that we were talking about earlier. I had a vision and an intention around becoming a model. You know, I was a stone heavy, I was a rugby player, I'd have a black eye and a cut face half the time. I never really kind of thought it would happen, but I had the intention. And it's so strange the way that kind of worked out as well, and that unfolded for me because it didn't unfold with me pursuing it. The opportunities kind of were presented by the universe. It's amazing. Anyway, that's another story maybe for another time. But the way I got into the fitness modeling was through living in a way that really aligned with my core values of how I wanted to live, and that includes moving every day, i.e. training and exercise. It includes eating things that make me feel full of life and make me feel good and enhance my life experience. And the aesthetics, the physical aesthetics of that were almost a byproduct of living the way that I wanted to, in alignment with my goals. And so that interestingly didn't feel like pressure. It just felt like it was meant to be, and it was just falling into place, and I was living it. And I've always lived a life of balance when it comes to food. You know, I'm a foodie first, and then into my nutrition second, almost. And like the cover shoot, I always kind of thought that I'll just be aware of, again, it's all in line with my life values and everything else, but I'll just be aware that if I do get the phone call, I'm kind of 2 weeks away from getting myself into relative shape if I needed to kind of have a shoot. And then I wasn't banking on the fact that the cover shoot would come along literally the day after my son was born. Wow. So we hadn't had sleep. Like training had taken more of a back seat than it would have done usually. So that was a little kind of race.
Just to clarify, though, you didn't have a dad bod on that cover shoot. I've seen the picture. There's not a dad bod inside.
It's funny. Again, I thought, I never thought that something like that would happen, that I'd be on the cover of a magazine, well and truly. And even when my agent called me to say that they were doing the shoot, then I did the shoot, and imposter syndrome it can be rife for me at times, and I did the shoot, and then a friend of mine, Alex Crockford, who's done loads of different cover shoots, was like, sometimes they don't use the shoot material, and I was like, he said that kindly. He didn't mean to like sow that seed of doubt in my mind, but I was then thinking, I've done the shoot, but they're not going to use it. And then it was August, a couple months later, that I'm just walking down Tesco's and saw it on the aisle. So it was a real kind of like, still couldn't really believe it. I was just like,
that's amazing.
I was like, who's joking about this? Whose joke is it? But yeah, it was an amazing unfolding of what was met. I really appreciate that moment. Actually.
I'd love to unpack that a bit more just for a sec. You talked about imposter syndrome, which I think is a huge topic. I can fully relate to that myself. Before I started modelling myself, I used to work in restaurants as a cocktail bartender for like 3 or 4 years. Before that, I was a paper round boy, so nowhere near modelling or fashion or anything like that. And I'm from Hull originally, so I didn't know any models. There was no modelling going on in Hull. No one really into it. So when I started doing it, it was very strange, very foreign to me. And then my first client pretty much was ASOS, which is a huge, huge client. And I was like, there's me, like 18-year-old, it might have been 17 or 18 years old. And I'm at ASOS head office shooting with models that I follow on Instagram as a fan.
Wow.
And there's me, like, imposter syndrome's through the roof, and I'm like kind of living a dream almost. And it came with its pros and its cons. Like, I felt very lucky, very grateful. But very quickly, when it became my new norm and I kind of settled into this new lifestyle as a full-time model, and I was working with other brands, not like ASOS, a huge brand, but other huge brands as well. And I would see myself on websites and see myself on covers and whatever it might be. And imposter syndrome was huge, and I felt almost like I didn't deserve it. It felt like I was getting a lot of success that I didn't deserve, or my behavior wasn't really warranting that kind of success. And I want to talk to you about that, because for me, it happened to me very young. And now I'm at a place where I can see that these are just external things that have no reflection on who I am as a person. They're just things that my outside environment is presenting to me, which is great, but they don't define me, and I'm not inherently a model. I am a person who does modelling sometimes, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I'd love to talk to you about how your journey with that kind of started and how it kind of progressed, if that makes sense. Was you always experiencing that, or was it something that happened at a later date, or did you kind of learn to deal with it as it kind of progressed? I'd love to hear from that. I still
experience imposter syndrome today. Like, we all have weeks of feeling particularly vulnerable. This week, I've got a few different courses that I'm doing at the moment, and I had to submit a video practical exam, and I was beating myself up over it. I almost didn't send it, because I was like, it's just not good enough. And I was in a bit of a sort of state, and I knew I was, so I was kind of trying to create that separation. But again, these are all very human behaviours, and I understood that. Anyway, I sent it off. I got the results back, and I got 100% on it. But I almost didn't send that video. I'm not telling you that just so I can say but I got 100%.
Get the trophy out.
It was just, again, it was one of those moments of, again, the universe saying to me, come on, you're just having one of these. You're having one of these kind of moments. You're being a bit silly here, so just chill out. But yeah.
Do you think that came from because of your years of the experience? And obviously, did people potentially know you in that role? Do you think that stemmed from there, as in there's this pressure, it has to be the best, or potentially even, I have to at least be competent in this, even though this is something you've done for such a long period of time? It's totally natural for these doubts to come into your head, aren't they?
Sure. I try not to. I try to go with flow, because I'm one of those people who needs it, and when I find myself getting too rigid, and trying to be, the best I can be, like we all are, but sometimes, as I say, you can put a bit too much pressure on yourself, and it's something I definitely do, trying to tweak this, tweak that. Was that word right? Was that word not? And as soon as I identify that I'm kind of, spiraling into that kind of cycle now, I'm pretty good at stepping back and taking a little breather from it. But again, it was a nice little reminder to me this week that I'm still very much prone to doing that, as a lot of people are. And I'm very lucky. I train people who run huge companies, multiple companies, and everyone has moments of doubt, no matter what level you are at. And in many ways, people who are running these big corporations, it's very lonely at the top. They haven't necessarily got people to tell them, they're doing a good job, or give them a critique and so on. And I've taken great comfort in seeing that with people who I would deem as being very successful out there in the world, having moments of doubt themselves in their own ability and questioning whether they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to have a good peer group around you, right? And I'm sure when you were going through those early stages of your modelling career, I imagine maybe had a few conversations with people about what you were going through, and it possibly helped the situation.
100%. I'd love to take it back a few steps, because something you said earlier really resonated with me, and I want to just make sure I bring it up because it was really powerful. You said something, we all have a body, but we're not our body. We all have a mind, but we're not our mind. I think it was really, really powerful. I'd love to ask you, at what point did that nugget of information hit your head and you thought, wow, this is how I need to kind of see who I am from now on? Because I think it's so powerful, and I think a lot of us wish we kind of realised that much sooner. We're not our emotions, and we're not our physical body. These are just things that we have and we can use our advantage. I'd love to hear when you kind of came across that information. Did you always know that inherently, or did you kind of learn that from a guru somewhere?
Definitely still.
What's his number?
mid meditation, just this light bulb appears.
It's funny. In August and September this year, I had this little knee op, which was just to clear up my ACL injury I had from 16 years ago playing rugby. Anyway, it meant that I had a kind of really chilled out couple of months, and I decided to do a bit of work on my soft skills and hard skills. So I enrolled in a few courses for my professional undertakings, but then I started doing a lot of work on my my emotional and spiritual state as well. And I kept having those moments of insight in August and September, kind of just sitting out in the garden and doing these courses. And a lot of it came down. There was the three words in this cycle that kept coming in, and these little these little patterns kept repeating themselves, either in the physiology learnings that I was doing for my PT work, right through to the patterns that were reoccurring for my personal growth work and my spiritual work. And it was about knowledge, practice, and insight. So it's not enough just to sort of become a walking encyclopedia of how to do fitness, right? As a PT, you have to really embody it. And then on the other side of that, you get amazing insight. And so I felt like I was having a number of amazing insights to all these repeating patterns. And in August and September, and that's when I had that particular nugget of advice given to me by someone who I was doing a course online with as well, and it all just kind of fell into place for me.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's quite powerful. I find that for me, those little sentences, quotes, or it might be a diagram here, just explaining things very simply so that I can picture it and see it. It does provide like quite a powerful penny dropping moment sometimes for you to sort of take out into the world and live your life with these little tools. You add it to your toolbox, and then you go out there, and when something comes up, because it always will, like I'll always have elements of anxiety, I'll always have elements of self-doubt, but as hopefully I grow, I have more tools and ways in which I can manage them. Yeah.
Wow. Do you feel as if, so obviously the self-awareness is great, and I think we can even tell this presence of like how grounded you are. You're very present, you're very in the moment. Do you feel as if you still know to keep yourself busy though? Do you feel as if that you found that balance, but then going from being extremely busy to then being very present, focusing on the here and now? Do you still feel as if you need to keep your mind occupied and ticking over? And then that, again, as Ben brought up earlier, that finds that sweet spot for you?
Yeah. For me, the big thing is creative purpose. So again, this hierarchy of needs as we go through it, and I do a lot of work on trying to provide for my family and have a good work-life balance, as I was saying earlier. But there's space in my life now for my creative purpose to really be fulfilled, and that's my big focus at the moment, in trying to grow into that space and allow it to unfold. And I'm already getting some interesting little signs and signals, which is leading me in a certain direction. I'm trying to allow it to happen and don't want to create too much resistance around it. So in answer to your question, I have to manage myself, because sometimes I get frustrated and I feel like I'm getting busy again, pushing myself, but I feel that creates too much of a resistance energy as well. So I'm working on my creative purpose, which is what I'd like to fill a bit of the space I have right now, but I'm busy not getting busy with it.
I think it's like, it's a brilliant point, because I feel so many people chase, and that's not to say don't take action. Of course we need to, but so many people chase, and then they get anxiety, they get frustrated, they get demoralized, they aren't happy with where they're at then, and they're comparing themselves to this. And whether it's a young impressionable teenager trying to get lots of followers, whether it's someone striving to be a model or an actress or something like that, but it seems to be very much so that you work on yourself, and then things start to come to you.
Exactly. I was going to say as well, we had Greg O'Shea on as a guest on the podcast, and he said something very powerful about how he kind of figured out who he was as a person and what his intentions are. And then it's funny how the universe works in your favor when you find that kind of space and clarity. And you've essentially come in and pretty much echoed what he said there. you've got to a point now where you trust that eventually things will work in your favor if you figure out that your intention is this, and this is how I am as a person, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and the universe kind of works in your favor when you figure those things out. Have you found that to be a useful thing, and if so, how can you advise other people that might be listening to reach that same level of clarity that you found?
Oh yeah, this is exactly it. And you know, that energy when you're grasping for something is very different. You know, when you it's almost like verging on, you know, this kind of negative ambition when you're grasping and trying to force things into place, as opposed to channeling a progressive energy into upskilling, personal growth, you know, all those kind of elements. And that's 100% where I'm trying to focus my energy on, and have been focusing my energy on, particularly in the last year or so. It's extremely powerful, I have to say.
I've just got a tiny insight there from a business perspective as well. There, if anyone's that way inclined, if anyone runs a business, or you know, is self-employed, or you know, they want to create a business, or they're struggling with a business as well. We know this from working together. It's that if I was to go off and try and chase getting, you know, people to work with me, or chase clients, or chasing sales, or chasing income.
You mean like you chased me?
And that type of thing. And that type of thing. It's that doesn't work. Yes, you know, you need to market things and that type of thing. Yes, you need to have a customer base. But what actually happens is, if you then just focus on the clients you already have, you focus on providing them a quality service, you focus on working on yourself, and then not that end product, that's when this magic starts to happen. Then lo and behold, these people are coming to you. Yeah. You know, you're not having to sell anything. People are bought into you because it's focusing on, again, on the here and now and what you already have, and becoming the best version of yourself. And then the rest takes care of itself.
Yeah.
It's another one of these little 3-word cycles that popped up for me. Danny, just thought of it then as you were talking as well. But is this concept of create, embody, attract. So you work hard on creating, and then you really embody it, and then you attract that almost into your life. So if you want to, you set out your kind of vision for your life purpose, and you see who you want to grow into, and you start creating and then embodying what you create, and then law of attraction, I suppose some people call it. It starts to find you in amazing ways. But I do, you know, some people say, you know, fake it till you make it and the rest of it. But I think I think that's probably early in the creative stage, and that's probably, you know, not enough. I think whilst you're faking it, you have to become it, i.e. embody it, and then eventually you attract. You know, I think that's how anyone really kind of grows, particularly from a professional point of view as well. And they see.
Yeah, and the faking it bit, that can be key though, because that's actually a bit of a good tip for people who are wanting to just get themselves out there. You know, you don't need to have all the answers. It doesn't need to be polished. It doesn't need to be the finished article. It's never going to be perfect. So get yourself out there. You might, you know, put on a little bit of a front to get your audience and get yourself out there to begin with. And with that, you will make mistakes, and then you'll learn skills, and then you can build. But when it gets to the level that you are at, Lawrence, you don't need to do that anymore. It just comes natural because you've done that work from within first, which I think is a great insight.
Yeah, you have to be authentic and embody it. So at some point, the faking becomes real. And even if you haven't got those so-called outcomes in your life yet, so there's a particular job, you may not have that job title yet above your name, but if you're truly embodying it and you're living and breathing authentically, then it's coming for you, and it's happening.
Yeah,
and it'll happen in amazingly beautiful ways, and you can witness that unfold, and then look back eventually and join the dots and think, that makes so much sense now. You know, that happened and that happened. Yeah.
Wow. I just wanted to touch on something that we've mentioned before earlier on. So I know you've become a father now. How much has becoming a father changed your perspective in life? Because I think it's something that we've all heard at some point. You know, that the three of us aren't fathers that we're aware of, but
Danny's face just went totally blank.
But yeah, just wanted to touch. Sorry,
it was the pause between the first bit and then that we're aware of.
Yeah, just ruined it. But no, just touching back on that.
Congratulations, by the
way. How much has that changed your perspective in life? Has it influenced the work that you're doing on yourself now to better your life moving forward, I guess?
Yeah, it's weird. I noticed a few shifts and changes after my daughter's 5 and our son is 2.5. So 5 years ago or so, after our daughter was born, my compassion levels, I suppose, were going through the roof without realizing. I'd feel so emotionally engaged with things. You know, it might be that I'll be kind of, you know, sitting somewhere and thinking about someone that I love, and I would really feel that love inside at a heightened level, or right through to, you know, I might listen to a song and it brings a lump to my throat, or I might watch a film and, you know, the ending might bring me to tears, and I would just kind of feeling more compassion for all beings, really, not just humans, but, you know, animals. And I was thinking about, again, there's a lot of stuff I'm still processing myself as about, you know, where I'm going as an individual in life, but it was pretty incredible. I think I've maybe appreciated that everything or every being that we see, human or otherwise, had parents, and there's a period of birth, there's a period of nurturing, and what goes into that. I probably was experiencing that firsthand, and so seeing the world in a slightly different paradigm, the paradigm of a parent, I guess. Not that it's not possible to see it if you're not a parent, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. For me, I was just like, I was talking to friends and I was saying, I'm just feeling so much right now emotionally. It was pretty incredible. So you've got that side of it, and then obviously you've got the practical side of it where you do lose control of your you know, habits, as it were. You can't control if you're going to be up all night, or the obvious parent stuff. You can't control if you know, you're ready to go to work in the morning and one of your children is ill and you have to divert to hospital, whatever. All these things happen, right? So I suppose I had to really go in deep with that whole concept of living with intent and being all in with what I'm doing, but also surrendering to the things that I can't control. And I think that being a parent is maybe a beautiful dance between controlling the controllables and surrendering to the uncontrollables.
Love that.
It's you know, it's been a lesson on that. But I also like when anything comes along that forces you to dig a bit deeper, whether that's to, you know, provide a bit more, whether that's to sleep less, whatever it might be. It's amazing how when the world challenges you, and you know, it's amazing how you can find that strength, you can dig deep, and you do grow. And parenting has forced me into a position where I've had to grow a lot, and I've really enjoyed that process and very proud of it as well.
Yeah. Wow. Almost creates a little bit of forced spirituality, doesn't it? What I like about what you're talking about as well, I just feel as if it's really relatable.
Yeah,
like
100%.
We've discussed again a lot. Like I've went through my own journey with this as well. When I started to change as a person, my mates picked up on it so much that they would always say like namaste to me at the end of conversations and stuff.
I forgot about that.
because of that this approach that I was taking. And what I like as well is you're bringing this back down to earth, and you're making it very relatable, because a lot of the time if I was to talk about Buddhist approaches, and if someone you know, isn't religious, they'd be like, oh, I'm not interested in that, without thinking about, well, what lessons can I learn from this? Similar when it comes to spirituality, people think it's this airy-fairy thing that, you know, we have no control over, or it's a bit pretentious, without actually realizing that actually it's just trying to better yourself as a person and understand the world around you. And I think you've been able to explain that in a really cool way. So hopefully some people have learned from that.
Yeah, I've definitely learned from that. I've learned a lot from you today. So thank you for sharing what you've shared in such a nice way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, awesome.
Is it time for the challenge? just to ruin that conversation. Is it time to?
Is that the time?
Okay, so essentially, Lawrence, we do this with every single guest. Okay. We have a little bit of a leaderboard going on. Now, you've noticed we are the Happy to Health podcast, and you may have realised that H2H is the logo, and that also stands for head to head. So we have created a head to head challenge that all of our guests do at the end. You look so worried, it's great.
He's leaned in a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Yeah, so I'll let Ben run through a little bit about what we're going to do.
So basically, the principle is that we need you to hold a squat for 60 seconds and answer as many quick fire questions as possible. Okay,
perfect, yeah.
Some are pretty straightforward and simple.
It's all right, it's not too
bad. Well, it could have been worse. Put it that way.
I love how the Welsh accent comes out when you say burpees. I noticed it earlier as well when you said spaghetti. It's the first word you said that came out Welsh. I was like, yeah, he's Welsh.
And there's tuth in year. and that's it. Then that's me done on the Welsh accent.
Remember when we had Catherine? We work alongside a copywriter, and she's got the most beautiful, amazing Welsh accent ever. And she was just coming out with brilliant things, like saying Bumblebee was great, and crumbs. She kept on saying crumbs.
What was it? Mega.
Mega's a big one as well.
Isn't the Scottish accent meant to be one of the most trustworthy accents? Is that
well,
fact,
no one who's ever met me has let that come across.
Well, they use it in certain adverts as well.
No, I think there's some truth to what you're saying there. I think that's why you see a lot of Scottish presenters and often news reporters as well. That's trustworthy.
Well, because we struggle with it sometimes because, I mean, I speak fast, but you speak a lot more broader Scottish than me. Yeah. So then when we speak, we sometimes over enunciate and pronounce. We try to. I try to make a conscious effort to do it.
Yeah, I learned the hard way. I guess. I think I know we're deviating slightly here, but it's a story anyway. When I used to work in my corporate job, we used to have a big sort of call centre down in Portsmouth. And I remember the very first time I went down there, we were hosting a bit of a workshop. I had to give a presentation to a room full of maybe 20 to 30 people. Obviously, I was nervous because I was new in the job. And at the time, I hadn't really worked anywhere else in the UK, so I was nervous, I was anxious, Scottish, so I already spoke fast. So I walked into this presentation.
I love how you said that like it was an emotion. Nervous, anxious, and unfortunately Scottish.
How are you feeling, Ben? I'm feeling very Scottish today.
I've had my haggis this morning. Anyway, so walked in to do this presentation and I was so nervous, I just rushed through the whole thing. And you might have seen it before when you're talking to people. Sometimes when you're talking to someone and you've got a Scottish accent, you're really aware, people start to kind of glaze over and the slow nod comes out and it's like, yeah, they don't have a fucking clue what I'm saying. So it was brilliant. I finished it, but nobody had an absolute idea what I was talking about. But everyone was really nice after it. So ever since that point, any time that I then started travelling for work, speaking to other people in the UK, I made a very conscious effort to slow down my words.
It's fascinating. I did the same thing literally this week when I was in Houston. Obviously, they speak English there, and it shouldn't be so much of a problem. But I found myself, when I was speaking to Americans, like subconsciously trying to accommodate them by speaking really posh, like this, like a traditional English person. And then I'd be on the phone
voice.
I'd be like, oh, now then, what's going on? You all right? Like that. And then be like, oh yeah, can I have a cup of tea, please? I didn't even realise I was doing it, but naturally, you just try to accommodate the people around you sometimes. It's fascinating how we do that.
Brilliant. Right,
so jet lag, by the way.
It's okay. It was terrible yesterday, but today I'm feeling much better. I slept for like 12 hours last night, so I'm feeling fresh.
Cool. Right, let's go for it.
Happy days. So head-to-head challenge. Like I said, you'll need to hold a squat and answer as many quick-fire questions as possible in 60 seconds. Some of the questions are dead simple, straightforward, and then other ones get you to think, and there's no right or wrong answer. Okay. If you can't hold the squat for 60 seconds, then whatever the last question.
I'm glad I did leg day yesterday.
Happy days. So do you want to get the timer out?
I'll get the timer out. So if you want...
Is this like university again? Do I have to do this naked on the table? Or is it
this is a rugby club.
We'll put a drink in the middle. And then
So if you want to stand up there, go next to Danny. We'll make sure you're on the camera. And then
I'm feeling a bit like...
We'll put this over to you as well. To make sure that you get picked.
Okay.
You get picked up. So last season, the leaderboard, the highest score was up at around 13. That got smashed yesterday with Matt Morton, who got 20.
20
questions. Yeah, I mean, no pressure at all. This is just like submitting that practical assessment all over again, isn't it?
No pressure.
No pressure at all.
He's got PTSD about that. Give him come on.
Am I allowed to adopt a wide stance?
Whatever you feel comfortable with, I think.
That's we're fine with that.
Extra points for form, no?
Yeah,
could do.
Right, are you ready?
You tell me when
3,
to go.
2, 1, let's go.
When was the last time you were drunk?
I was last drunk in oh my goodness.
This is a competition.
Okay, yesterday.
When are you most productive?
Yesterday was very productive
Who is your inspiration and why?
because I was drunk. Who is my inspiration and why? My brother's my inspiration because he takes on challenges and really loves life and doing very well with.
Love it. Love it.
What's your favourite number and why?
Favorite number is 7 because when I was younger, my favorite rugby player, I can't remember who that was now, but he wore 7, so I was like, I'll have 7.
Great favourite. In which subject were you worst at school?
I was worst at I think mathematics.
And which subject were you best at school?
I was best at art.
What scares you?
5,
This squat.
4,
Cats or dogs?
Scaring me.
2.
Cats or dogs?
Cats and dogs. Cats and dogs. Is that Scottish accent?
We'll give you that one.
Cats or
Give it that one.
dogs?
What did we get?
We had a grand total of 8 answered there.
Oh, that's terrible.
Impressive.
Well done. Well
It's not
done.
easy. It's really not easy.
It is
Yeah,
hard.
you guys being very kind. Was that a trial run?
Well, I think
me
you're just a
another
bit. I think you're just too nice.
Yeah,
you're
I
just a
think
bit
you-
too polite.
I'm sorry.
You spent 30 seconds on the first question. I was thinking, what was she doing? And then like you would say like mathematics instead of maths.
Then I suddenly realised that I don't have to give honest answers, and I was like, "Don't." I've been trying
That's
to
right.
think too hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, valiant effort.
Matt only really won because you shouted Roy Keane out for every single answer.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is true.
No, I think what I didn't realise until just then was that you can actually say whatever you want. You haven't got to be honest. So when you was like, when was the last time you was drunk? And you went, you couldn't think. You went, yesterday. That should be the tactic. Just lie.
Just like
Cats or dogs? Brown. Next.
We'll edit that out for any future guests listening.
that's it. Fake it till you make it. That's it. Right. Lawrence, so we'll get ready to finish off just now. So you've mentioned about being on the FiiT app, and obviously you've got other things going on. Do you want to just quickly let all the listeners know about what little exciting projects you maybe have coming up, and then also let them know where they can follow your journey or if they can find out anything more about you?
Yeah. I guess everyone just says Instagram for this, don't they? Everyone's like, my Instagram handle at Lawrence Price _. Just pretty chilled right now, but I'm excited to see what does unfold in the coming weeks and months. So yeah, keep an eye out.
Brilliant. Mate, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. Thanks for coming in.
It's been really, really enlightening, and I'm sure our listeners will have enjoyed that too.
Oh, bless you all very much, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, what another incredible episode, guys. That was amazing, and I think probably our biggest takeaway was how Lawrence has made his journey finding himself and touching on spirituality in a really, really relatable way. So hopefully you can relate to this too. We really, really hope that you have done. If you think someone else can relate to it, then please support us. Please share the podcast. Please let someone who you love listen to this if you think that they're going to benefit from us. Please subscribe, please like, please do everything that you can to get this good word out, and we will really look forward to seeing you at the next show.